This is episode 1 of the Air Hug Community Podcast. I'm your host, Judy Arazoza. Here on the Air Hug Community, we share conversations and stories with guests and myself that inspire us not to just survive, but to thrive. We dive into topics such as relationships, habits for better health, and how you see the world. Whether you are a mother or an other, the Air Hug Community is here to remind you that improving the lives of others will undoubtedly improve your life exponentially. Hello, 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 and welcome finally to the Air Hug Community Podcast. This is a place where you will come to hear stories from guests and myself about not how just to survive in life, but how to thrive. It's about relationships, the quality of daily living, healthy living, including moving and what you put in your mouth, what you think, and how you respond. It's just my take on life with a little help from some guest experts. So who am I? In the short version is this: I am the mom next door. So how did I get to be here? Well, I'm from a large Italian-American traditional loving family that was full of lots and lots of hugs and pasta and good food all the time. So I grew up cooking and eating and spending lots of time listening to stories around the table from my relatives and extended relatives and friends that my parents had over. I ended up marrying my Cuban-born prom date. And before that, I studied respiratory care because I always had this urge to help others. But something else that I had always dreamed of doing was becoming a hairdresser. And so I actually became a cosmetologist first and used my cosmetology little kind of underground business. Don't tell anyone. But I used that to pay my way through college. And then I ended up for a number of years being an adjunct instructor at the Health University in Syracuse, teaching respiratory care. And that was loads of fun until the next chapter happened, where I became a stay-at-home mom / sports mom for about the next, 25 years or so. And I like to say that I majored in mothering and family management and minored in fitness as a hobby. So I always was drawn to fitness and sports from the time I was a kid. I grew up in a family full of sports, always played sports, and so did my husband. And of course, we ended up with 4 kids who loved sports. And so I was the taxi driver, sports mom, you name it, that kind of thing, and just learned a lot along the way. Enough so that I could train myself at home, and I did a lot of self-educating. Eventually, I went ahead and got certified as a trainer and a precision nutrition coach, and I'm just coming on right now, taking my level 2 exam from Precision Nutrition, and I'm super, super excited about that. It's been a really fun year of learning precision nutrition. And if you haven't heard of them, they are probably the world's best nutrition certification system, short of getting a graduate degree. And so that's where I am with that. But I do own and maintain a company called Grateful Fitness, where I train women in strength and conditioning and healthy eating habits. So we're not about being skinny. We're not about just looking good in the mirror. We're about finding the best health practices for each individual woman that comes to our locale. So we are both online and in person, but that is another story. Let's get to Air Hug Community. How did we get to be an Air Hug Community? So I've been wanting to do this podcast for probably the better part of 3 years. And I always said, well, what if I don't have anything to talk about? What if no one wants to hear from me? And I had so many people say to me, Judy, you're almost 60 years old. You've got so many stories. And I do have a lot of stories, some of them fun, some of them sad. But it's the way life goes, right? And so I'm here to share my experiences, but also to bring in the experiences of experts on topics that come up for women, So whether you're a mother or an other, there's lots of topics that we want to cover. I think of things like bladder issues, parenting your parents, parenting your kids, homeschooling your kids, courting your mate, after 40 years of knowing each other. Little things like that. And then we get into, things that maybe you don't want to mention, like bladder control or remaining intimate with your husband or, I don't know, it just flew out of my head, but I had something else that I wanted to talk. Are you ever too old to do a boudoir shoot? How do you say that? Boudoir? That shoot where you put on like sexy clothes in front of a photographer. Vulnerable moment. But I really want to talk about that because the people who have done it have talked about, and it's on my list of things to do. Let's call it a bucket list. But yeah, we got to get brave. And it's, we talk about things like, let's look in the mirror and instead of thinking negative thoughts, let's think positive thoughts. But it's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to cultivate your mindset to do that. And a lot of that has to do with changing the way that we've been brought up. A lot of us have been brought up, okay, I'm going to go Brene Brown on us here. A lot of us have been brought up with shame, and it's not any, blame on anyone. It's just maybe the way, the culture we had at home. And it's, maybe even shame, like you would never, put on sexy underwear in front of a photographer and get your picture taken. But you know what? It can be, from what I understand, it can be a life-changing event. I don't know. I haven't done it yet. I'm going to get brave someday and do it. It is what it is. So speaking of that, let's talk about our significant others. You know what? They are really important, special people. And okay, that sounds kind of like, duh, why did you say that? But you know what? And I can be guilty of this. Life sometimes can get very, very, let's say, challenging and taxing, and we feel like we have the weight of the world on our shoulders. And before we know it, we can kind of just take our spouse for granted. And so I'm very guilty of this. In fact, I was just reminded of that not too long ago. Sorry, honey. But it's important for us to remember that our soulmate needs us as much as we need them. And if we want to get back, we have to give. And it actually begins with the most important relationship in your life. And I will argue that to everyone, the most important relationship in your life is the one with your significant other. It's not the one with your parents, and it's not the one with your children, even though they are very close seconds. It's the one who you have decided is going to be your ideal person. And if you don't have your ideal person yet, or you're currently like maybe got it wrong the first time, that's all right. There's lots of things to learn from that. But the one thing that I think is very, very important for us to stress is that our relationship with our significant others is super, super important. And it has a bearing on our entire being. It has a bearing on their being. And so we never stop courting our mate, whoever our mate may be. They need to know that they are the most important person to us all the time. And honestly, we can falter at that sometimes, but it's important to take a step back. And I'm very lucky. I married this Cuban guy, and he is the most sensitive, caring guy in the world, and he kind of will let me know. He's like, hey, don't forget me. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. You know what? Yes, I was distracted. I was thinking about like what to name this podcast, or, when am I going to fit my workout in, or how am I going to, attend to my business. But you know what? At the end of the day, the most important person in your life is your mate. And it's very important to make sure when we're thinking about improving the lives of others that it begins at home with our mate. So I didn't intend to go on and on about this, but I do feel that it's really, really important, and that sometimes it gets put by the wayside. And while I do feel it's important to be an independent self and to think for yourself, and even like, this is so funny, like my father, when I was a young married woman, he's like, now, when it comes time to vote, remember that you can vote. And I'm not going to get political ever on this podcast, other than the one thing my dad said was, when it comes time to vote and, voice your opinion about things, think for yourself, And he also said, you know what? Yes, you're going to have a mate and you're married this guy and he's wonderful. My dad said to me, make sure that if anything were to happen, that you could take care of yourself. If you were to find yourself alone tomorrow, or maybe, who knows what would happen, could you take care of yourself? Could you do that? Not just financially, but would you be stable enough mentally and emotionally to carry on? And all grief aside, not that I'm pushing grief aside, obviously there would be grief, but just to have the confidence in yourself, because I think a lot of times as women, we don't have the self-confidence that we could have. So, and that's why I love every now and then I'll say, and I've put this up a lot on social media, look in the mirror and come up with 3 things. They don't have to be visual things, but come up with 3 things that you love about yourself, and don't forget that. So, in a big part of my business, in fact, that's what the name of it is Grateful Fitness. So a big part of the whole core value thing, along with improving the lives of others, is being thankful for what you have. And whether you do it in a gratitude journal or just before you close your eyes at night, make it a habit of being grateful. Even for the little things, I'm grateful that I got to walk my dogs today, whatever it is, grateful for all sorts of things. I'm super grateful that on a whim, I threw this picture of a sandwich sign that said air hug into a Facebook group of women that I'm in a group with. And it's a group, we're in it together, and we all kind of help each other with productivity and that kind of thing. And it's run by my wonderful friend, Melanie. And shout out to Melanie. It's called the Get Shit Done Society, I think. But anyways, I threw this picture in of the sandwich board sign that I ran across. And I literally stopped the car when I saw it. It was on a road, a main road near where I live here. And I pulled the car over, rolled the window down, and took a picture of it. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do with that picture. But I was like, yes, air hugs, right. So anyways, in that group, I posted a question and I'm like, I'm so excited about finally starting this podcast, which there's just stories in me bottled up that I want to share with people, funny things, not so funny things, experiences that I've learned from, yada, yada, yada. And I just threw that picture up and I just said picture for attention. And then one of the women said, well, it sounds like you're talking about air hugs as a concept. And I'm like, actually, you're right. And I just started laughing. I'm like, yes, we're an air hug community. So that's what we are. We're an air hug community where it's mothers and others, and we're here to uplift one another and to remember not to take ourselves so seriously. All right? We're just here evolving as humans, trying to do the best we can and trying to make our day and others' day a little brighter as we go along. So I would love it if you would very much go out and give me a rating. Rate this podcast, with 5 stars, please and thank you. Subscribe to it and please share it with your friends. I promise I will always do my best. I'm not here to talk incessantly. Some episodes might be short and some might not. You never know. So I don't have a timeline, but it's my job to actually be concise and to just give you my thoughts and impressions and hopefully let you run with it and do your best. I welcome your comments. And so that's it for today. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.